Washington comes to talk. And AM 630.
All right, welcome back, folks. Dan Bongino here with you on Saturday. I'm really excited about this guest we have. We have Mark Steyn. You've probably heard Mark on these airwaves many times in WMAL, filling in for Rush Limbaugh, my personal favorite guest host. And I don't just say that because he's on the air and it would be embarrassing to say otherwise. He really is absolutely terrific. Mark is a best-selling author. I've read quite a few of his books. After America is my personal favorite, America Alone, Lights Out, and Passing Parade. You can follow him on Twitter at Mark Steyn Online and check out his website, SteynOnline.com. Mark, thank you so much for joining us. It's an honor to have you on the air here.
Hey, my pleasure, Dan. Great to be with you.
You do a wonderful job filling in for Rush. I am absolutely sure you get that all the time. You're probably sick of hearing it, so I'm happy to have you here. I wanted to talk to you about this Virginia Supreme Court ruling. So we all know the hockey stick, the infamous hockey stick, which is basically the graph showing that the climate is warming into perpetuity and will be like the nuclear reactor on the sun shortly if we don't institute a massive global tax. But the Virginia Supreme Court recently blocked the release of Dr. Mann's documents and emails, which you were trying to get a hold of to show, hey, listen, can we at least see the data on this before we institute massive global change? I mean, this is pretty dangerous stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the issue here. There's a personal issue for me in that Michael Mann is suing me. But there's an issue for everyone on the planet, basically, because this single graph is the biggest reason why, at the turn of the century when it came out, it was taken up by Al Gore and by the IPCC and the UN, and it was the greatest pretext for global government anyone had ever devised. And if they're going to institute a kind of global carbon tax regime and essentially change the lifestyles of advanced societies over this graph, then we ought to, I think, at least see the science that's gone into the graph.
Yeah, I mean, this is dangerous on both ends, Mark, because, one, the University of Virginia is a publicly funded institution, so taxpayer money, number one, was used to fund this research. And secondly, the policy prescriptions, as you just stated and accurately stated, are potentially devastating if they're wrong. I mean, they're showing us this data, and most of us have seen this hockey stick, and it seems to go up in perpetuity, which I don't even know is possible. There's no asymptote for those calculus folks out there. I mean, this is a very dangerous precedent for folks like yourself who are just saying at some point, all right, prove it.
Yeah, I mean, that's really the issue. As you say, this is a publicly funded university. And the data that has gone into creating this graph ought to be known. The way it was, I mean, basically, anybody under a certain age knows well what I'm talking about because they were taught it in schools. They showed Al Gore's movie, which is built around the hockey stick graph, was force-fed to grade schoolers and kindergartners ever since it came out for the last decade. And it shows basically the last millennium as the handle of the hockey stick as a flat line, nothing happening. The temperature didn't alter from the year 900 to the year 1900, and then in the 20th century it shoots up like the blade of a hockey stick, disappearing out of the top right-hand corner of the graph. So you think to yourself, oh my God, we better head for the hills. By 2014, we're all going to be frying. It's going to be like the Chernobyl reactor in here. We got to get the hell out of here. Right. And in fact, that didn't happen. Right. If anyone is listening, if you're off to college this fall, there has been no global warming your entire lifetime.
Right.
And yet, somehow this hockey stick, the data that went into creating it remains shrouded in mystery, even though multi-trillion-dollar public policy depends on whether this thing is accurate or not.
And we're talking to Mark Steyn. You can follow him on Twitter at Mark Steyn Online and check out his website, SteynOnline.com, which, by the way, I found it great that you have on your website, there's a way to support Mark. I think you can get like a keychain hockey stick on SteynOnline.com. Is that right?
Well, I decided to counter because it's as anyone who's been involved with the U.S. Legal system, it's an expensive proposition when you've got a big bunch of lawyers on the payroll and you're fighting a half-decade legal battle. And so I've been. I thought I'd counter the hockey stick with. Things like the Steyn Online Liberty Stick, which I think is actually, what's going to kill us is not global warming. What's going to kill us is that we're tossing, essentially, we've created a bonfire of the liberties, and we're tossing Magna Carta and the Bill of Rights and all kinds of other stuff onto that bonfire. And that's far more of a threat to the planet, as I see it. The loss of individual liberty, including on the climate change issue, where half these crazy scientists want to actually lock people up for criticizing climate change theories. So as I see it, it's like a clash of sticks. It's like this climate change hockey stick, and then the liberty stick will eventually shatter that blade and smash that stick in two. And I will be on the courtroom steps like Frank Sinatra at the end of Robin and the Seven Hoods, or Denzel Washington at the end of The Hurricane, according to taste, singing "My Kind of Town, Washington, D.C. is, if things go my way in D.C. Superior Court. But I do regard it as really a clash between core human rights, such as free speech, and the kind of climate change orthodoxy promoted by Michael Mann and other people.
Well, thank you for fighting that fight. Most people find it more convenient to just give in. I know you've been through this before, but what begs the question, Mark, what are they hiding? I'm looking at a report it's back from 2009 on Hot Air. They cover the clandestine activities behind closed doors on emails amongst these scientists. Because remember, the debate is over, Mark. As they've said, anytime you disagree, the debate is over. And here's an interesting one where was it Phil Jones? He's from East Anglia. He says, "I'll be emailing the Journal." He's talking about a climate journal, established climate journal, to tell them I'm having nothing more to do with it until they rid themselves of this troublesome editor. In other words, the editor at this journal, I guess, had the gall to publish some scientific research that maybe the globe wasn't going to melt tomorrow. And behind the scenes, him and Mann are saying, "Hey, I'm not dealing with this guy unless they give this other guy the boot."
Yeah, and everyone takes these things very seriously. Peer review. Science is peer reviewed. You keep hearing this kind of talk. Oh, it's peer reviewed, as if this is some exhaustive process. What it means is that Phil Jones peer reviews Michael Mann, and Michael Mann peer reviews Phil Jones. It's got actually no more. It has no more serious value as an objective examination of what's going on than when Cameron Diaz says that Gwyneth Paltrow is a great actress, and Gwyneth Paltrow says that Cameron Diaz is a wonderful human being as they're on the red carpet going into the Oscars. I mean, I can't exaggerate. It's literally impossible to exaggerate how corrupted and worthless the peer review process is.
Isn't that interesting, though, how some portions of liberal intelligentsia and Hollywood, the self-love, isn't it amazing? How did they must get shoulder cramps, like patting themselves on the back, telling themselves how wonderful they are all the time.
Well, that's what it is. That's what essentially, you think it's people, and it's particularly true in our modern age, which is credential obsessed. So they think that if a guy has all these letters after his name, it must mean something. But it's actually like a friar. It's like a sort of Friars Club schmooze, but without actually the sort of ribbing and roasting, because they're all too humorless for that.
Right.
But they're saying, "Oh, he's a great humanitarian and a wonderful human being. Will you please give a big hand to Phil Jones from the Climatic Research Unit?" I mean, that's basically that. It's no more substantive than that.
We're talking to Mark Steyn. Follow him on Twitter at Mark Steyn Online, and make sure you check out his website, steynonline.com. You can support him as well in his efforts here. How surprised were you, Mark, about the Washington Post and NPR? They joined you in this case in some respects, right? And you're countersuing to get another shot at these emails and this data, correct?
Yeah, that's right. At some point at the District of Columbia Superior Court, he'll have to cough this stuff up. In the Virginia decision, all the big shot media types, the Washington Post, National Public Radio, all these guys joined in, not because they don't agree with climate change, but they understood that, in fact, this decision would gut the Virginia Freedom of Information Act. Now, if you're a journalist and courts are telling you that the Freedom of Information Act is essentially worthless, they eventually came to understand that, notwithstanding all their support for global warming and all the rest of it, that this decision in Virginia actually makes their job much more difficult, makes it difficult to get public documents, not necessarily just related to climate change, but public documents into all. So while they may love Michael Mann and Al Gore and global warming and all the rest of it, they're thinking, well, wait a minute, what if it was about Dick Cheney and Don Rumsfeld torturing somebody in Iraq? We'd want to get the paperwork on that. And actually, if court decisions like the Virginia one are allowed to stand, it becomes actually much more. They gut the Freedom of Information Act and make it much harder to get public documents.
You know, Mark, I wanted to segue into this. It's not unrelated, I think, in the larger umbrella view, but you have a piece up, Truth and Consequences, on SteynOnline.com, and is a piece adapted from your book, Passing Parade here. It's about Pope John Paul, and it's a great piece. I love it. I actually underlined quite a few lines in it. And how the New York Times, feels the need, of course, to take a shot. They write at one point when he died, not recently, but about Pope John Paul. Among liberal Catholics, he was criticized for his strong opposition to abortion, homosexuality, and contraception. But this is your line here, which I think is really endemic of the problem with liberalism. They live in a world of intentions, not results. You write, the root of the Pope's thinking that there are eternal truths no one can change, even if he wanted to, is completely incomprehensible to the progressive mindset. There are no absolute truths. Amen to that. They live in a world completely devoid of any results. Everything to them is a moving yardstick, is it not?
Yeah, that's right. And I think what is interesting is if you think about, because the Republican Party, for example, is under quite a lot of pressure. A lot of people who give money to the Republican Party say things like, well, yes, I want lower taxes and that kind of thing. But please, just stop yammering on about abortion and gay marriage and all this kind of stuff. It makes you look like a bunch of hicks. And I think the way to look at that is, look at what you're caving in on now and try and pitch it 10 years down the line. What are you going to be caving in on then? I mean, the big issue here, and I think somewhere in that piece I quote from Pope Paul VI, who actually, he's the Pope between these two guys who are getting canonized tomorrow. Pope Paul VI actually did, in 1968, did this brilliant prediction of where the loosening of sexual morality would actually lead. And if you look at the vast amount of human wreckage around the world and around America in particular, where a majority of black births, a majority of Hispanic births, and a majority of poor white births are now out of wedlock. I think whether one thinks it's a good thing or it's a bad thing, you have to give Paul VI. Pope Paul some credit for actually predicting 50 years out where all this stuff was going to wind up.
Yeah, Mark, I know you're busy, so last question for you. We'll let you go. But After America, your book is just terrific. It's my personal Mark Steyn favorite. The book is very interesting because it's not a lot of fluff, and it's not a lot of, hey, it's all going to be okay, don't worry, sit back with your bowl of Cheetos and watch the Dallas San Antonio game. I've always had kind of a similar view, and I think Schumpeter had alluded to it, that capitalism kind of at some point sows the seeds of its own destruction via its own success. So just quickly, is it really over? Are we finished? Is there any hope?
There's always hope. And the statistics can be bad and the numbers can be bad. But it's like Gary Cooper in High Noon. One guy walking down a dusty Main Street when everyone else has fled can still make all the difference. And I believe that's true. The numbers and the statistics are bad, but the right leadership, and more to the point, people, demanding the right kind of leadership from the bottom up is what makes all the difference.
Mark, thank you so much for joining us. I love you on Rush. Keep up the great work. And, folks, if you want to help support Mark in his efforts, SteynOnline.com. Follow him on Twitter, @MarkSteynOnline. It's a great honor, Mark. Keep writing those books. They're absolutely terrific. They're game changers. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Dan. Enjoyed it.